You have found Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphant successes of business owners across the land, coming to you remotely because that's the world that we live in right now. You'll also hear us through the Sun Prairie Community Radio, sponsored by, or I should say underwritten by, Bank of Sun Prairie. Don't call it a sponsorship. My goodness. This is public radio, right? Anyways, my name is James Cademan, entrepreneur, author, speaker, and helpful coach to small business owners across the country. And today I am excited to have Nicholas Hinrichsen. Hopefully I did that right.
You did that very right. Yeah.
Awesome. Co-founder of withclutch.com. Now I should say Nicholas reached out to me and he said, this is what I got going on. And you had me at Clutch.
Yeah, you like that name?
Oh my gosh. I am a manual transmission or die kind of person. So I'm not sure how the whole electric vehicle thing is going to work out in my life. But I'm like, with a name like that, it's got to be good. So how about you tell people, let's just start with Clutch. What is that?
I'll tell you a bit more.
Tell me what you got going on.
Yeah, we're refinancing auto loan with clutch.com.
All right.
And so people don't refinance their auto loans. People refinance their mortgage, especially when interest rates go down. Last year, to put some things into perspective, 47%. So almost every second mortgage that was funded was a refinancing. So super common.
Sure.
This year, it's predicted to be even higher. At the same time, less than 5% of all the auto loans were refinanced last year.
Wow.
And so the reason that is people, A, don't know you can do it, and B, if you know, it's really inconvenient to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's an offline process. You basically end up talking to call centers. They call you, you need to send them documents. They call you again, oh, we forgot something. So it's a really inconvenient process, mainly because the auto loan companies, so the traditional banks, they're just relying on the dealership to get auto loans. So if you wanted to give out auto loans as a lender, you wouldn't go straight to the consumer. You would just tell the dealership next door, hey, can you send me auto loans?
Sure.
The dynamics that then create a little bit of a mess is you as a lender, if you really want these loans, you pay the dealer a high referral fee.
Oh.
And then the person paying for that is the customer. So if you get your loan at the dealership, which 80% of the people who get a loan for a car do, then the dealer will give you the loan that's best for him, pays him the highest referral fee, and not you the lowest interest rate. And so that's the crux, if that makes sense.
Sure. So I guess are banks not necessarily chasing those directly very often, because generally speaking, an auto loan is a little bit less of a loan than a house or a business or something?
No,
like
it's
that?
not less of a loan. It's just harder to get the customer's attention. So if you were in the market to buy a car, you would not shop for a loan, you would shop for a car. So you go to the car, look for cars, and then when you get to the dealership, you realize, oh, I need to pay for this car.
Who knew?
And the dealer says, no problem. But yeah, if you're a lender approaching customers individually, that's really hard at scale. And you don't get them at the right moment. You may tell them today, hey, James, you might need an auto loan, and you might be excited about it. But unless and until you're at the dealership ready to pull the trigger, the marketing won't work. And so that's why banks don't do it usually.
Gotcha. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, he's just adding one more shady level onto dealerships there, right?
The reason I should tell you about the inside where we learned about it probably makes more sense. Cool. So I'm originally from Germany. So I was born and raised in Germany, moved to the US in 2011, went to Stanford Business School, and then started a business called Calypso with a classmate and very good friend of mine. He's a huge car nut. His first car was a DeLorean, the one from Back to the Future.
Oh, yeah. I know. Are they aluminum or stainless steel? I always forget.
He would know.
Okay. Okay.
So that tells you how much I know about cars.
Sure.
So huge car nut. We ended up building this company where we would help people sell their cars. So I would help you, James, sell your car to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Changed a little bit. Ended up building this online retailer. So we were selling used cars online. And then ended up selling the company to Carvana, which Carvana is the company with the vending machines, and that worked out really well for us.
Yeah.
But when we're still selling cars, we noticed that tension. We noticed that people asked us for advice and asked us for loans after they fell in love with a car. And it's weird because usually people don't trust car dealers.
Right.
So they're really skeptical. But once they fell in love with a car, all of a sudden they ask the car dealer for a loan, like a financial product. And so that didn't make any sense. And as you would expect, the car dealer has his own incentives. He'll give you the loan that pays him the highest referral fee.
Mm-hmm.
And that's especially true for the segment of people with not perfect credit. So everything below 700 credit score, that's where the dealer can put markups on the interest rate to make more money and gets a lot of referral fee. And so we're trying to clean that up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine that's, it's weird. I was talking with business or potential business owners about getting loans for their business.
Yeah.
And I was started talking about credit scores, and you can just see people like, oh,
Yeah,
it's
credit scores are
interesting.
complicated.
Yeah, how many people have less than stellar credit? Because
More than 68% of the Americans have below 700.
that is amazing to me.
Yeah.
As a business
It's
owner, that every once in a
nobody
while,
teaches you how to use your credit card, right? Like nobody teaches you financial literacy. Nobody teaches you if you miss
that's
a
fair.
payment, your credit. And
That's
so
fair.
so we sold our company, stayed with Carvana for 3 years, left, and the deep in ourselves, what we try to do or wanted to explore is how can we help people get out of bad credit? Like that's a little bit the mission that drives us.
Mm-hmm.
And to put things into perspective, when I moved to the US, I didn't have any credit. Like we don't have the same system, so I started from scratch.
Oh, all right.
And then I had to build my credit slowly. At some point, Fiat was offering these little Fiat 500s, these little cars,
Yeah.
in an electric version. It's funny that you mentioned electric earlier. So they were offering those for $89 a month for a 3 years lease in California. And Chris and
So,
I
okay, I was just
co-founded.
gonna ask. I'm like, where are these things at? That sounds cool.
Yeah, no, they're the best.
California.
Highly recommend driving one of those. They're amazing. So we got these. We went to the dealership. Chris was done in 5 minutes, $89 a month for 36 months. And then I sat down. It took half an hour for some reason. And the financing manager comes back and tells me, so you don't have great credit. Your payment will be $1,200 a month. I'm like,
1,200.
1,200 instead of 89. He's
Well,
like,
that's a
yeah,
percentage.
you have a very thin file and there's no credit history. So we need to build that first. And so I offered to just pay $89 times 36 months in cash on the spot, so they have their money. It's like, no, that's not how it works. And then Chris co-signed the lease, otherwise I wouldn't have gotten that deal. And then it took me 6 months, only 6 months of $689 payments to build enough credit. And for fun, I ran my credit application again. I would have gotten a loan of up to $100,000 at 1.99%. And
Wow.
it shows you how quickly your credit can move if you do the right things, but nobody tells you what the right thing is.
Right.
And so that's true for every American. That's true for small business owners. That's true for everyone.
Yeah, it seems to be somewhat of a secret because even for people that have good credit,
Well, it's
they
a
don't
secret because
have.
nobody tells you. It's once you understand how the system works, which
Yeah.
nobody will tell you, it's straightforward. The system doesn't want you to extend or to take on too much debt. So the system wants low credit card utilization. The system wants you to not inquire all the time for new loans because that just means like you're addicted to spending and consumption.
Mm-hmm.
The system wants you to make payments on time. And then there's a few other factors, but those are the main factors. And if you just do that, like it's common sense, but nobody reminds you of doing that. The opposite happens. Everybody wants to give you a credit card.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're trying to do, big step backward, we're trying to help people get out of this bad credit hole.
Sure.
The problem is if you're in it, it's really hard to get out. Nobody helps you.
Yeah.
And
Any financial hole. Yeah,
that's
it's tough to get
exactly
out of.
true. And that's how this huge gap between like income of wealthy people and income of the average American happens because when you're trapped with bad credit, all your money goes to paying interest.
Mm-hmm.
Auto can be as high as 29%. It's crazy. And so
Wow.
if you don't have that burden because you received financial literacy training early in life and you didn't make any mistakes, like a hell of advantage. All the money that you don't pay in interest, you can invest in the stock market, and the stock market goes up, and all of a sudden you have this huge gap between somebody who didn't know and somebody who knew. And so since we got lucky with our sale, we want to give back and now work on a company that helps people avoid these mistakes.
Sure. So tell me how, like, you guys aren't necessarily financing this
Yeah, good
personally. Are
question.
you working with banks, or where
Good
does the money
question.
come from, I guess? Or just tell
Yeah,
me how
good
it
question.
works. That's
So
probably a
there's
convoluted question, so I
no,
apologize.
but it's a very good one. So there's actually two sources of capital. There's one for the loans.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's an auto loan. These products exist. the lenders are just not very good at reaching the customer. So we need to do that part of the work. We need to find customers. We need to explain to them you can refinance. And then we're more of a marketplace between the capital of the lenders, auto lenders, that wants to be deployed in auto loans. A very good source of capital are credit unions, for example. Credit unions are non-for-profits, have a community charter, have deposits from you and I, from all the members, and they want to deploy this capital to yield a return. And they love investing in auto loan portfolios because it's a collateralized asset, and it's relatively safe investment. And so these credit unions want new members, but they're just not as strong as they could be in getting them. That's where we want to help. Our company that we started is funded with equity, like investors who believe that this marketplace that we're creating can be really, really valuable. Because we start with auto refi, but there's other products like your insurance products you can change at any given time and save money. Your warranty, there's gap insurance, which is a product that only makes sense for some of the people. I can tell you when the right time would be to buy a car. I can tell you when the right time would be to sell a car. So there's a lot of reasons why I could help you in the car space. And since we've been in the space for 7 years, we just know.
Yeah.
And so that's ultimately where we want to build. The equity capital for our company comes from venture capital investors.
Got it. Okay.
And so more interested in talking about the current companies, probably talk about the previous company that we started. We started it right out of Stanford Business School. We had this conviction. We helped our classmates sell cars. And we raised $1.2 million from professors and lecturers, believe it or not.
From professors, you said?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. All right. They must have, I hope you passed.
I think I first passed and then I borrowed the money.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, they had to believe in you in order to throw cash like that at you, right?
Yeah, this is Silicon Valley a little bit. So in Silicon Valley, you have a lot of entrepreneurs who were very successful. They want to give back. Everybody finds his or her way to give back. A lot of these entrepreneurs then become lecturers at business school because they went through the experience too. And this is how you have access to incredible people. We always went into the conversation with, hey, we want to ask you for advice. We often left the conversation with a check. And so that's how we got started. We really got started because one of our professors who we appreciate a lot, and he's been a friend and mentor ever since, he listened to me telling him I need to figure out what I want to do with my career after business school. And then he quickly noticed that all I was talking about was how I'm selling my classmates cars. And he said, I think you should make that a business. And if you want to get started, here's $50,000.
Wow. That's pretty cool. So that means that you didn't have to go through the whole pitch deck thing and
not for him. That happened after. No, we it was funny because we actually wanted to raise something like 250,000. So we had the first 50, then we kicked off fundraising officially, sent emails to friends and friendly investors who we knew, and then other professors and lecturers. That was on a Friday. On Monday afternoon, we had basically $380,000 committed from investors because more people wanted to invest more money than we ever dreamt and assumed. And we had yet to have our first official fundraising meeting. And so then we went to the first meeting, and in that case, I think it was a professor asked us, how much are you trying to raise? And so initially we thought we'll raise 250, but now we already had 380. So we said 500. It's like, okay, cool. Count me in for 50. Just one piece of advice. If you think you need 500, you really should raise 750. We're like, okay, that already happened once, but okay. So we entered another meeting the next day. Same story, asking for advice. Got the person really excited about what we were doing. Thankfully, the professor lecturer said, yeah, I'm actually interested in investing. How much are you trying to raise? We said 750. He's like, okay, I'll do 50, but just so you know, if you think you need 750, you should raise $1 million.
Funny.
And we're like, we just did that yesterday. And then, yeah, fast forward, somehow we ended up with 1.2 million.
Wow. So what did you, I guess I'm totally new to the whole venture capital angel investment stuff. Like we're just tiptoeing into that with one of my new businesses now.
I'll walk you through it.
So just right into the tiptoe water, and we do not have a bunch of professors writing us checks.
Yeah.
So maybe I should have went to Stanford.
Yeah, you should. As a guest,
probably couldn't. Doesn't matter.
You can zoom in or something.
Yeah, right. So tell me how. I guess what were people expecting? What were the people that invested money? What did they want in return?
So the more time passes, the more structured all of this actually gets.
Okay.
Today, we just went through the process again. So here's what you should expect. You start with a pre-seed round. The next round is a seed round, and then the next one is called Series A. And then you have Series B, C, D, just add a letter until you go public yourself.
Okay.
There's other forms of capital. We'll not go into that because it makes it more complicated and doesn't add a lot of value. So pre-seed means you raise $750,000 in total at a valuation of 3 to 4 million. So you give up a little, yeah, you give up 25% of the company or so, 20 to 25. That means you have like an idea and a conviction and the power to convince people to believe in you, but you have nothing, no product.
Mm-hmm.
You
Can
use
I?
that first, yeah.
I want to pause you for a second there because I always get stuck on the valuation.
Okay.
So that could, because they're essentially valuing an
Nothing, a pitch
idea
deck. Yeah.
or a future
Yeah.
likelihood.
Yeah.
But it's like what Tesla is priced on the stock market now. Like, how
Yeah.
is
I
a
mean,
company that produces a few cars in comparison to Ford worth 4 times what Ford is?
more than all the others combined.
Yeah, yeah. It's just I feel like it's the valuation. One, how do you come up with that number?
Yeah.
Two, how do you get people to agree to that number?
Yeah.
And where is that coming
Let's do
from?
this. I'll walk you through the 3 initial rounds because I think that's really
Okay,
interesting. And I'll
fair,
tell you what market valuations are more or less. Obviously, you don't have
perfect,
the extremes.
perfect.
And then I'll explain to you how investors think about it.
Okay.
So as a founder entrepreneur, first round is pre-seed. You have nothing, an idea, lots of conviction, and you convince people to invest in you as a person. Like, because
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing to invest in it. Maybe you have a pitch deck, but there's nothing. Mostly what they invest in is what you've done in the past.
Mm.
Because in our case, we're now going into auto loans and auto finance and refinance. Um, Obviously, that's very, very similar to what we've done before when we were selling cars. So we're very authentic in the space. People believe that we understand it.
Sure. So now it's an easy layup. You're not
I
new to the
wish,
market.
I
Yeah.
wish, but yeah, like in
Easier. It
theory,
was an
that's
easy
what people like to
three-pointer.
see. Yeah, exactly. Like two balls at the same time.
Yeah, right.
Next round is seeds. You probably want to raise maybe somewhere between 1 and 2 million. The valuation will then be probably 6 or 7 before money, so 7 or 8 after you count the money in. So you give up another 20%, 25% of the company. Now you have a prototype. Users have started interacting with the website or the app or whatever you're trying to sell. And now you're telling the investors, I think I have something people want. I need to prove that. I need to prove that I can reach more customers and can actually scale the business more or less predictably. And then Series A, that's real institutional money that can be somewhere between 5 and 10 million. And again, you see all the other ranges. You give up 25% of your company again. Everybody else gets diluted too.
Okay. I was going to ask you about
Yeah,
that. If they
you
get
can't give
diluted
up
or
more
if
than
they're
100%. So every time you give up 25, it goes out of your pocket as the founder, but also out of the pocket of the other investors. And now you have a product that people want. You've proven that. The next thing is to find out how to scale it, how to make it really big so the next customer comes in and contributes margin versus like some companies, like WeWork, for example, they just grow really fast and don't have a solid underlying business model. At that point, you would assume it does. You just want to scale, and then you grow.
all right.
And so that's from a founder's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
From an investor perspective, you can compare offline businesses like starting, I don't know, a tire shop, to name a stupid example, with a tech company, because tire shops can become very, very big very quickly. Tech companies can become very, very quickly very big because you're moving bits and bytes, you're moving maybe money, but it's
Right.
all electronically. And so when you have something that works, like TikTok is a good example, there's no physical infrastructure. It's just people starting to use, engage, and then it goes to the roof because it has so many users. And so what investors are looking at is, first of all, is the product something people want? Like, is there a demand for the product? And do you have some sort of secret sauce? Can you provide a service or a value that other people can't? Sometimes it's because of a patent. Sometimes it's because you know a customer behavior, how people engage. And if you're really quick, you get all the customers, like Facebook. And then people don't end up going to any other platforms. So the question is, do you have something that creates value? And then the question is, how big can it become? And if both of these questions are answered positively, yes, you have value and this can become very, very big, then it actually doesn't matter too much how much share of the company you become you receive early on, because even like 5% or so of Tesla would be a lot of money right now.
Yeah.
And so if you invested a 3 million or 6 million valuation, although these valuations seem really high and crazy, like you just secure your share in the company. And capital is not the bottleneck. There's a lot of money out there. Access to good founders, good companies is what's the bottleneck right now. And then if you buy into a company, you want your share of 20 or 25% as an investor, and valuation is a little less important, as crazy as it sounds.
Interesting. That is, man, you just shattered my world there.
Okay, hope you listen.
Because I'm so used to helping people buy and sell existing businesses.
No, it works very differently.
That they've been working, I mean, they've been in business for 10, 20 years.
Yeah, the biggest difference is these businesses, well, I hope it for your friends and colleagues and clients, these businesses usually don't grow 100, 200, 300% year over year continuously.
No, we're talking coffee shops or like an electrician.
Exactly, and since they're relatively stable, you do a multiple of the cash flow. You do, like, there's a market for what these businesses are worth. But if your company just keeps going straight up into the air, doubles every year and introduces new products that people want and keeps growing, then most of your value is not this year's profit. Then most of the value is the future profit. Like Tesla is a good example where, well, actually, maybe Tesla isn't a good example because they actually have profit. But there's a lot of companies in Silicon Valley that don't have any profit and are nowhere near to having profit. But for as long as they grow like a rocket ship, the assumption is you'll figure it out at some point. And for as long as you make a positive margin on any product you're selling, that means you'll become so big at some point that the fixed costs stay fixed. And the margin that you're adding with every incremental customer pays for the fixed costs.
Yeah, I guess you remind me of a few stories. Like WeWork, that's a great example of something that didn't go quite as well as planned. But then I think I'm trying to think.
WeWork. These stories are actually really bad for Silicon Valley and for the startup community, because it's so easy to be like negative on WeWork, that would have never worked, and these people are crazy and they're just throwing money around. These stories are outliers.
I think the COVID thing probably didn't help.
It actually helped a lot of companies.
Okay, but as far as WeWork,
arguably you could make a case why COVID was a good thing for WeWork long term, because people travel less, people now work remotely. It's accepted that you don't have to be in San Francisco to work for a company out of San Francisco. You can be in Wisconsin. If there's a WeWork, you have a small office where you can focus and you're not sitting at home where people have construction sites on the roof.
Sure.
So arguably you can make a case for WeWork under these circumstances. Short term, a problem because people are not using the offices. Right. Long term, the idea of having remote space is really good. WeWork had a different problem where the problem for investors is their job is to deploy capital. And oftentimes, this will sound crazy, like if you, as a venture capital investor, it's much more costly to not invest into a company, like let's say $1 million, and then potentially miss out on the 100x you could have made because it became a huge company. Like if you don't invest, you lose 100x, 100 million. If you do invest, the maximum you can lose is 1 million. And so once you feel like there is some sort of a rocket ship or potential to invest, everybody wants to invest. Because it doesn't matter if you invest 1 or 2 million, if it becomes 100, the return is so high it pays for the fund, the investment fund. And so the dynamics are slightly different than you would expect them to be. And so as a result, it's hard to get investors on board, but once one tips and you have a good and compelling story, other people get really interested, because then they don't have to make the decision. Should I invest, yes or no? Should I be the one run the risk? Now the decision is, there is a company, they will do that. Do I want to be part of it? And so psychologically, it's a very different decision investors are making at that point.
Sure. This is so interesting because I feel like the typical business model of, let's say, pre-mid 90s or pre-2000s, right?
Yeah, these changed a lot.
Oh my gosh, Silicon Valley type businesses are essentially turning it upside down. So this is weird because I'm so used to working with mom and pop
Yeah, it's very
service,
different.
physical inventory stuff
And
that,
like all of that is changing as we speak. I'm sure, sadly, a lot of your clients or the people you work with struggled during COVID, but the resourceful and yeah, the ones that look in the future and are tech savvy, they'll find ways to drop
yeah,
ship
you may,
goods. They don't have to have inventory, and all of a sudden they're starting to become tech companies.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so you can see it with like food delivery services. You can see it with Zoom, like video conferencing services. All these things were, for some people, nice to have, but people didn't use them. All of a sudden, it becomes like the way to communicate, the way to eat your food. And so that's what tech is doing, and that's the future. It was not foreseeable it would happen with such momentum and this very unfortunate inflection point.
Right.
But some people foresaw that it'll happen eventually. It'll just take longer, and so that's why a lot of these tech valuations are so high, including Tesla's.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm in an office now where it's just me because all my
Yeah.
employees are working from home, something that I never wanted to have happen because management, control, redundancy, blah, 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 all that
And
stuff.
how's it working? I'm sure you're surprised how well it works.
Yeah. I hate
Yes.
to say it, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah, I mean there've been some growing pains and stuff like that, but nowhere
Yeah.
near the pain that I thought there would be.
Yeah.
So here we are, man. Rocking
Well,
and
glad to hear
rolling.
it's going well.
Yeah, yeah, it is going well. So then let's keep going on the funding thing. How how are you figuring out who to present to?
Yeah.
And how are you presenting? Because a lot of these people I feel like are either hidden or they kind of make themselves the rock stars so you can't get to them.
They're rock stars until they're afraid of missing out on a deal, then they're not rock
Right, there
stars
you go.
anymore.
You got the drawing. I'm the
No,
one
they're
who
incredible people, very smart to get to the position that you can manage other people's capital. Obviously, that's a huge endorsement. This is, I can speak mostly for Silicon Valley because it's the Bay Area, that's the market I know.
Mm-hmm.
For me, when I moved here, I could have just moved here, right? I could have just moved here and found a job. That wasn't like, I wasn't even thinking about that because I knew I needed like some way to get into like the ecosystem, the community, and I thought Stanford would have been a good way to do it. What I didn't know is how exceptional of the way it was.
Yeah.
And the school is incredible. Like the campus looks like a country club. It's clean. It's incredible. So modern. Our business school was brand new. Phil Knight, the founder of Nike,
Oh
he had
yeah.
Stanford Business School. He donated the whole building. And so, like, this is how I said earlier. These alumni, they all become successful, and then they give back to the school, and then you have access to them. And so, arguably, most of what you learn at business school is from these individuals sharing their own stories. Uh, and so it starts, the way it starts is you approach these individuals, you raise your pre-seed and seed round. And then when it comes to talking to institutional investors, there's multiple ways to access them. Like you never want to send them a LinkedIn message or call them or send them an email. That never works. You always want personal introductions. But the same people that gave you the seed money, they know them. Those are their either peers or former classmates, because there's only so many venture capital funds, and a lot of people would like to contribute and work for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you need somebody who understands startups and business, like going to Stanford Business School to recruit isn't far-fetched. And so that's why through the Stanford network and then other founder friends and other advisors, you just ask these people for an introduction to X, Y, or Z, because you know what these partners are very vocal around at the venture firms, what they believe in. They share their thoughts through podcasts and articles they write and blog posts. And you just need to find somebody who has the same vision of the future as you do. And then you build the partnership, and then you raise from these funds.
So you're almost vetting the people investing the money as much as they're vetting you.
Yeah, it's a little bit back and forth because you're somewhat married. When you raise capital, you usually give the investors a board seat, so that investor, even though he's not in the business day to day, he'll get a lot of power, and he gets to say, not by himself alone, but he gets to add his opinions to when it comes to determining who are you hiring, are you raising more money, who's the CEO. And so these important decisions, you start inviting people into the room. And you want to make sure that this is a person you're primarily aligned with in terms of like your value system.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is how Adam Newman got fired. This is how Travis from Uber got let go as the CEO of Uber. And you hear these stories relatively often. And so you need to make sure, because at some point founders lose control of the company, and there's only few founders. I think Google did it very well. Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg did it exceptionally. He had so much demand for capital that he dictated the terms in every round he raised. And one of the terms was, yeah, I'll have board control. I'll have all the voting rights. So you can't get fired.
Oh,
Ever.
interesting. That's clever. You got to give him credit for putting it in there.
No, he's yeah. I know a lot of people have different opinions, and I all I want to do is speak to the business he built, and it's incredible what he built. And then he
Yeah.
made very, very smart decisions in the acquisitions. A lot of, like, he was young when he acquired Instagram and WhatsApp, and so, like, often young founders think they can take over the world, and if somebody else built a good company, like giving somebody a lot of capital for it can feel wrong, and so a lot of founders might think they can just rebuild what other people build. And so having the courage to admit that this is a great business instead of building it myself, I should just buy it. That's a very grown-up decision, I think.
Sure. It's fascinating when you look at someone like Zuckerberg, who's relatively young, that he didn't, like, I don't see a whole lot of mistakes from a business standpoint.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm sure there are some, maybe not as well known in my end of the
yeah,
world.
often, so there's, yeah. So you obviously don't see what's going on day to day. You also,
It's probably on purpose.
yeah, it's probably better. Um, so I'm not sure whether Facebook is a good example, but one example worth mentioning is an alumni from Stanford Business School. He once came back also, like a guest lecturer, and shared his story of how he built his company. And there was, I think, an online betting company or so, and he built it in the UK, and there were two at the same time. He was the one with a product that worked. The other one was the one that had raised a lot of money but didn't have a good product, and so they ended up merging. And then it became a really big company. And he was straight with us and said, we messed up everything. Like, the product was so good, we just couldn't break it. Like, the users came, the product broke, but the users really loved what we had and were patient with us. And so the product was so strong that even though they made so many mistakes, they couldn't prevent this company from becoming big.
Huh.
And that happens probably more often than you and I would imagine.
Interesting. So tell me, for the people that are investing, I guess the venture capitalists and stuff like that, how many times are they expecting to win versus expecting to lose or
Lose.
not win, I should say?
Win it, not win so much. I'm sure everybody has a slightly different formula. The rule of thumb is, like, out of 10 companies, one becomes really big and pays for the whole portfolio, for the whole fund. So if you have a venture capital fund of, say, 200 million,
Mm-hmm.
and you invest, let's just assume $5 million in specific companies, like, one company at least has to return all the 200 million. And they can become so big if they're in the billions, and you have a decent share. Then one single company can pay for the whole fund. And so if you invest 5 million, you own 20% of the company. At the very early on, it means that's crazy, because that means your valuation is like 25 million.
Yeah.
But if your company becomes worth billions and you still have that 20%, then you get, like, literally 1 billion, and then you get 20%. That's 200 million that pays for the whole fund. And then you have other investments that can return more.
All right.
So that's more or less how investors are thinking.
Gotcha. Okay. So what do they typically use for criteria? Because you said it sounds like they're investing in the person first, or the
Yeah,
founders.
it depends on which stage you invest. Early, you have the pre-seed and seed stage investors. Those investors usually invest in the people, yeah, because there's not much to invest in. They invest in people, they invest in the space. They may have a thesis of how the world should look. So
Mhm.
Elon Musk actually didn't start Tesla, right? He was one of the early investors and then just took over.
Mhm.
He just strongly believed in solar. That's why he built Solar City. That's why he invested capital in Tesla and dedicated all his time. So he just had that vision and was willing to, like, bet his money and where his thoughts were. Then he went a step further and just took over the company, and then proceeded to raise all the money himself. But early on, you believe in your conviction of how the world should look, and you ask yourself, is that the person who can make my conviction come true? And then later on, it's around traction, growth, unit economics. So are you making money in every single piece of service or piece of product you're selling? Then it becomes a little bit more like the business as you know, where you have to look into financials. But it's much later in the stage of the company where you start looking at it this way, because these companies grow so fast that all the value is in the future.
So initially for the seed and the pre-seed, at that point, there may not even necessarily be sales happening. Is that right?
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. Like in most cases, pre-seed, there's nothing you could sell. There's just an idea of something. If I built this, I think I would find people to pay for it. And then seed, you have your initial sales, you have a product, but you're not raising based on a multiple of your sales, a multiple of your profits. You're raising based on, okay, so I can see how you can sell these. It looks like people want it. Next job is to find out how can I reach a lot of people very easily. And then lastly, if I reach them at scale, will I make money on every unit I sell? That's a little bit the order in which people in the Valley who invest think.
Okay. Interesting. It's so funny because Madison's got a little bit of startup stuff, probably nowhere near what San Francisco's got going on.
But that's cool. You should get involved there.
Well, it's interesting because I attend 1 Million Cups.
Okay.
Group back when we met.
No, it's virtual.
Now they put it on pause. Well, I think they said until September, but we'll see. That's to be determined, I guess.
Okay.
Anyways, you hear about these companies and you follow up with them later and find out that they don't have any they don't have a revenue model, and they're still getting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars thrown at them.
I don't know. You should have, I mean, you can look in the numbers, but Facebook must have been worth billions before they made their first dollar in revenue.
That blows my mind.
But it's just because they have the captive audience. And then the second they turned it on, it went through the roof.
Sure.
Mark always knew, if I have the users, I can serve them something that's both useful to the users, but also useful to the advertiser.
Okay.
And it was very obvious to him. The movie actually does a really good job explaining it, because his business partner, he felt like, no, we need to prove that this business can make revenue. And he's like, no, when we have the users, like for as long as we're providing value to the users,
right,
with a platform where they want to come back, it's all about engagement. Like monetizing that should be easy. And he was completely right.
Yeah, that is.
But there's different business models, right? There's business models where if you want to make your money through advertising, through allowing other people to do very targeted advertising to your users, then the users are not the customers. Then the users are the product.
Yeah.
And so you need to determine what your business model is.
Sure. Yeah, look at something like Craigslist.
Yeah, incredible company.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's fascinating. Fascinating. I haven't even looked at them recently. Well, I should. I'm always looking for cars, so I totally looked at them.
I actually think that cars are on the decline, and Craigslist, and you would find them on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, I'm finding that. And personally, I mean, side tangent, I'm not a fan, because I'd much rather have a phone number I can talk to someone than get ghosted by someone on Facebook. I'm just not on Facebook that much to...
Story of my life.
Yeah, whatever. It's weird. Yeah, but I can totally see that. And I feel like Craigslist has to step up their game, right? Figure that out.
They don't care about that. Like Craig, who started it, has a very, very different vision of what's good for the world. He's never, he just put the product out. People started using it like crazy. And he never put a lot of effort into making it prettier. He just didn't want to. He didn't think that was the right thing. But he spent a lot of effort into protecting it. So you can't steal data. They're very sensitive around if you steal the listings and put it somewhere else. There was actually, you'll laugh about this. We had one competitor. When we were still selling cars, they wanted to create a car selling page and thought they could just borrow the listings from Craigslist. Oh, so they took them. The other thing they did, they solicited, they offered their service to Craigslist users. Like, we'll sell your car. Here's a much better platform. And Craigslist really doesn't like that. And so they got sued. And so they lost the lawsuit, and Craigslist won a lawsuit of $33 million
Oh,
against this company. They had barely raised 4 or 5 million, so they didn't have that money. Um, and so the math was interesting because violating the terms of service was like a couple of million or so in like fines and penalties. What drove the claim to 33 million was the fact that they sent text messages to people who said, I don't want anybody to solicit service. And if you reach out to somebody and send somebody text messages and mark it, you can be penalized for it, up to $1,500 per text you send. And so
wow.
Craigslist estimated the text message they sent, like, okay, in total, you must have sent, I don't know, 20,000 or so. And so that's they got to 30 million as 33 million. And then nobody knows. Then the company offered to settle for $50,000. And Craigslist said, okay. But then the people who actually received the text message, they started a class action lawsuit. And that's how the company died.
Wow.
Yeah.
There are so many cool stories over
This is Silicon Valley. If you haven't seen the show Netflix, I haven't, because people told me this is exactly my life, and so I
Okay.
didn't want to watch my life. But yeah, like, it's Silicon Valley is ups and downs and roller coasters of emotions, and then people working really hard, some succeeding, others struggling, and
Sure.
then in the end, life is good.
That's as long as you're having fun,
That's true.
that's the name of the game, right? So I
Agreed.
guess tell me what your plan is with Clutch. Is it to build it up and sell it? Is it build it up and retire by a beach somewhere?
Yeah, so no real entrepreneur builds a company to sell it. Like, this is just not why you're in it. If that's your intention, I think you won't be tenacious enough. You just won't last long enough, because if the only motivator is money, it's just too hard to do it, and it's
Hmm.
too many failures, too many frustrations, too many obstacles in your way. You have to have a slightly grander vision and motive. And in our case, we want to help people get out of bad credit. Like, there's a lot of people who are stuck
Hmm.
for very unfair reasons. Nobody helps them. They don't even understand why they're stuck. They just assume it is how it is, and it doesn't have to be. There's 100 million car loans out there. 20% of those can be refinanced. So that's 20 million people who could save money if somebody told them and helped them. And so
Wow.
this is the angle we're taking. We're going to help these people get out of bad credit. We want to then provide more assistance and other vehicle related expenses, and then hopefully build a big company that lasts and has a sustainable impact.
So do you guys take care of the loan, or are you essentially just connect them with the bank and then step out?
We connect them with banks, because banks are really good at giving out auto loans, like
Hmm.
calculating the risk, calculating interest rates. And since money is like cash is basically commodity, everybody who has it can provide it. And
Hmm.
since interest rates are so low, there's a lot of cash out there. We wouldn't be good at lending, because if we'd be competing with credit unions, they don't even have to make a profit, so you can't compete. What
Hmm.
we're good at is acquiring customers through digital channels and then engaging them and offer them more value. Think of Credit Karma, which I'm sure you know, but for auto expenses.
Interesting. So was it tough to tell or to ask for banks to work with you or to figure out a commission structure? Or is
So
that?
most of that is happens to be market rate. So we used to work with these banks before, when we were a car dealership.
Oh, okay.
The difference was, we knew all the rates of the banks, but the customer didn't. And this was by design, because dealers want to be able to pick the loan that pays them the highest referral fee.
Hmm.
But we're just going to flip the screen. We'll show consumers what we're seeing. We let them pick their loan. We're not stuck on making a lot of money per customer, because we don't have the overhead of a car dealership behind us. We don't need to make money. We're not limited by how many cars you can sell.
Right.
And so as a result, we can be the advocate for the customer.
That's pretty cool. So I forgot to ask you this earlier. You
Yeah.
get the funding, and like when you were talking about before, how this you started out
Yep.
250, 300,
Yeah.
$700. What do you do with the money? Is it programming? Is it marketing? Is it buying a Ferrari? Like,
No Ferrari yet.
no Ferrari yet.
I
Okay.
don't think
In the
that's how you
works.
make friends, because
All right.
you want to be able to depend on the same people again down the road. No, so there's multiple ways how to spend the money. Your goal in an early funding round is to get to what's called product market fit. So proving that people want what you have, and
Mm,
that you have a way to reach them. So I need to prove that I can actually refinance auto loans. Like I have a network of banks and lenders. I can put them in touch with consumers. I can make it a fully digital experience. Number one, I need to prove that people, ideally, they recommend the service to the next person they know, because that means it's a really good sign for product market fit.
Hmm.
And then I need to start figuring out, okay, once I refinance your loan, James, how do I find the next James? How do I spread the word and people come in and pull the service out of our pocket versus us spending all this money on TV or Google or Facebook marketing? And so once we get to that inflection point, then that's the time when you probably want to raise more money and then double down pretty aggressively to make sure you get the word out more aggressively, figuring out how else can you monetize and help people. Because if you make more money on a customer while still providing good service, you actually can start spending money on marketing. And so this is basically the goal of the next round then. But for us right now, the goal is to build the product so people can use it, delight customers, obsessively delight customers, make sure that they love it so much they tell people.
Obsessively delight. I love
Yeah,
that.
it's important. Otherwise, like it's so important that you tell your friends that you use the service and it worked, because you want to grow exponentially. Otherwise, if you have to buy every customer for marketing, you only grow linearly, and that's not how you build the big companies. You need the virality. You need people to talk about it.
Sure. That word of mouth marketing. I like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so basically, that's the point where we need to get to.
Gotcha. So with Clutch is relatively new. How old
Yeah.
is it?
So we left Carvana early June, then took a week off and went to Yellowstone when nobody was there, and it was incredible. Then we built a prototype so we have something to show. Went out, talked to investors, are about to close a funding round, which is exciting. And now we're starting to build the product, and then trying to acquire the first customers.
I want everybody just to listen to that and think, what did you do in July? Right? You just built an entire car refinancing
This is
website, getting investors, and people are
no,
like, I
no, no.
still didn't watch
This sounds
Netflix.
like an overnight success, but it's
No
7 years
such
in the
thing.
making, and the hard work is still ahead of us.
Sure, that's fair. So do you code or do you have to hire coders or how does that work?
Chris, my co-founder, and I, we're technical enough to be quote unquote dangerous. Like
Okay.
the current page I built it, but like there's a lot of tools out there that allow you to make a lot of progress without writing code yourself.
Hmm.
um, Especially if you want to get to a proof of concept, it's very easy to decide, okay, I need to bring on a software developer in order to make any progress. That's not true. There's a lot of tools out there. Even if you're non-technical, you can build those things. So for a proof of concept, we were equipped enough, but now is the time to add somebody to the team who's not necessarily writing code every day, but who's better than us at making buy versus build decisions. So what software we can buy so we don't have to build it? What are the interfaces we need to build? And then manage an engineering team. Managing an engineering team requires a lot of experience in the field, because it's not as straightforward. Things take longer, things are more complicated, and you as an outsider, you'd always think this should happen quickly, but usually it doesn't, which is also why it's so important to make good buy versus build decisions. Buying you can do quickly. You just spend the money today. If you build it, you always think it takes much shorter than it will be. You'll have less bucks than there will be, and it's always more expensive than you think it will be. And so we're in the process of figuring out, once we have the capital from the funding round, how to use the capital wisely.
Gotcha. Do the people that fund you, do they govern that at all? Or is that
Um,
up to you?
to some extent, as I said, there's a board usually, and usually investors take a board seat, so you have regular updates. In our case, like the best people to raise money from are people who have done it before, and it'd be silly not to check in with them. Like they give you money, but the really valuable thing they'll give you is advice and experience and introductions. And so when we raise, for us, it's incredibly important to raise from people who have been entrepreneurs before, who have strong networks, so we can continue to learn. Like we have a vision, but to get there requires a village, and so we need to build this village.
That's fair. That's cool. I'm excited to watch where you guys go. I did want
Let's
to ask you really quick because I poked around at your website and you're having to work with banks. So are you just connecting with them from a software standpoint had to be a challenge?
Yes and no. So there's these banks use what's called, now it's very technical, use loan origination systems.
Okay.
They use software in order to make their loan decisions. think of a point of sale system, and you go to a restaurant, like you see this cash register and people enter stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's not hardware only, it's actually software primarily, and so you can integrate with that. We'll just be a new lead source, so we'll send traffic their way. We'll tell, hey, James wants to refinance his car, here's all the documents, because I know what the bank needs. I can also make the decision on behalf of the bank on our website, and then when I collect everything that the banks require, we'll hand it over, and then they can execute on the refinance. You as a customer, ideally you don't interact with any lender unless and until the deal is completely done. And then all you will have to do is to answer a phone call or an email and set up auto pay. So you pay at the different bank or the new bank versus the old one. But the majority of your memory and your experience should be with off interacting with us.
So are you, when people go on withclutch.com to refinance their auto loan, are they essentially getting a response or getting approval or whatever they need?
Yeah. The goal is to get from your phone number, make it incredibly easy, from your phone number to an approval with 3 clicks. And then you should sign online, take care of everything else that needs to be done in the background. And one day you'll get a call, hopefully like within the day or the next day, all is said and done. Existing loan is paid off. Now you're starting to pay us.
That is cool. I'm looking at this from my perspective with, I got a business partner and I are putting together easyorderwindows.com.
Okay.
And we're relying, so the website, people can order windows for their house, whatever.
Okay.
So that part, easy-ish, but the actual getting people to getting not the customers, but the vendors to do what they promised, that is not software. So, oh my gosh. That's all we're asking you to do is keep your promise. That's all we're asking you to do. And we're paying you to do it. It's still nerve-wracking. Oh my god!
Yeah, I mean that's the benefit of fintech, like technology, because you're moving bits and bytes and money and not physical goods.
Yeah, I was assuming you had to deal with something with every bank different. And I'm like, holy cow!
You also don't. There's a lot of banks, and banks actually want to do the right thing. Okay. They want you to get an attractive loan. They want you to have a good experience so you can refer customers to them. So by nature, they're actually on your side. The problem is there's a lot of banks, and as I said earlier, it's very hard to target you when you buy a car. So the bank relies on the dealership to do all of the work, and the dealership has their own incentives, and they're not terrible. But if you're a dealership, you yourself understand why you're doing what you're doing. In the grand scheme of things, it's just not ideal for the customer, and so that's why we're trying to help. In your case, what you're trying to do, you drop ship, right? You take the orders, and then you tell the vendor, send out the goods to the customer, and there's a lot of coordination going on.
Yeah, we measure and install and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of labor. So the purchase itself is online, but we're relying on people is what it comes to. Software.
People think these food delivery services are really easy. They're incredibly complicated because the restaurants need to prepare the food. Then you have all these in Latin America would be motor boys. Here it's like Uber drivers and drivers pick up the food, and then the food isn't ready and you mess up. Or the devil's in the detail.
The driver.
Exactly, the devil's in the detail.
Yeah,
but that's what makes it fun. So you have a fun challenge ahead of you.
In the end, I solve problems. You solve problems. Like every entrepreneur, that's the game.
That's true. Don't get discouraged. If you had a bad day, get some sleep, work out in the morning, and then start over.
Yeah, that's right. Every day is a new day, so it's all good. Perfect. Yeah, it's fun. Cool. Well, I appreciate you being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. This was super fun.
Oh my gosh, this is super informative. I think you just helped about 20 businesses start up and maybe 10 get financing. So that's cool.
That would make me feel really good. If anybody wants to reach out, like feel free to put my LinkedIn or whatever contact details in the show notes.
Yeah.
If they want to reach out, send me a message.
Is there an email or something you want to throw at people right now?
Pardon?
Is there an email or some way to contact you want to put in the show?
It's so long and nobody can spell my last name, so the risk of messing that one up is high. Sure. Look for Nicholas Hinrichsen. Even if you misspell it, you'll find me on LinkedIn.
All right.
Then send me a message there. I'm very responsive. Love to help.
Very cool. Very cool. And the website is withclutch.com.
Correct.
For refinancing autos. And I'm impressed with the website the way it is. So
thanks.
It's cool.
I'll take it as positive feedback and a compliment.
Indeed. Authentic Business Adventures is brought to you by Calls on Call, offering call answering and receptionist services for small businesses across the country, on the web at callsoncall.com, as well as Draw In Customers Business Coaching, offering business coaching services for entrepreneurs in all stages of their business, on the web at drawincustomers.com. And of course, The Bold Business Book, a book for the entrepreneur in all of us, available on Amazon and wherever fine books are sold. We'd like to thank you, our wonderful listeners, as well as our guest, Nicholas Hinrichsen, co-founder of withclutch.com. Nicholas, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Last.
Thanks for having me. I had a good time.
Yeah, this has been informative, and I'm excited to see where withclutch.com goes.
Me too.
I imagine so. This is always cool. We'll have to follow up again.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love to.
Find us airing on 103.5 Wednesdays at 1 p.m., Sundays at 2 p.m., as well as at sunprairiemediacenter.com. Past episodes can be found morning, noon, and night at the podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. I want you to stay awesome. And if you do nothing else, you know what to do. Enjoy your business.